AJ Thompson with Black Ice Graphics out of Palmer, Alaska here. In this video, I'm going to use Adobe Illustrator to create vector files that I can then send to my plotter and cut out of a vinyl paint mask. Then apply it to the substrate so I don't have to worry about cutting through my customer's paint, damaging the surface. A couple of the other benefits for this is if I need to recut something, I can always guarantee to cut it the exact same size, or I can even simply resize it a little bit to make it fit better. Let's go ahead and start with the basic user interface, then a couple of basic projects to get you more familiar with the tools and how to manipulate the Adobe Illustrator. Once you open the program, it brings you to this welcome screen. It shows recent projects you've been working on, a few other menus and whatnot. This Learn one, this one's kind of cool. This will take you to the Adobe website and gives you a bunch of tutorial videos and walkthroughs on using Adobe Illustrator. A lot of those videos are more designed for print or digital view, but some of the techniques they show you are handy to have, especially if you do want to do some stuff for print. It gives you some presets here, but let's just go ahead and create a new. We'll give you the basic interface. Once you create new, it's going to bring up this new document window. It's got some presets up here for whatever type of project you're working on. The film and video one's kind of cool because it gives you a transparent background if you are working in that industry, but we're going for airbrush work, so it doesn't really matter what you click on any of these. The parameters are all going to pretty much will be the same for the plotter. You just got to determine the size you want, what kind of dimension, whether you want it to be set up as a portrait or a landscape, and then name it. I recommend naming your project right here as you go. It'll pop up a default if need be, but if you name this now and then it auto saves and you have a computer crash or power goes out or whatever, you can find your file a little bit easier. Once you get those all set, hit create, and then it will pop into the actual software, give you a artboard that matches whatever dimensions you put. I put mine at 12 by 12 for this demo, and then you can start going. Just like all the rest of the programs, you got your drop down menus that help you manipulate things. This toolbar right here is directly connected to whatever tool you're using along here and will allow you to manipulate some of those tools. Sometimes it's handy, other times it's not so handy. And then over here you have another toolbar that is more, I don't know how to say it. Just as we go, I'll explain the actual individual tools over here. So the first one here is your selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of rectangles and a circle out here, just so we have something to kind of play with. Now your select tool will select whole individual objects, or you can click and drag and select multiple objects. Now if I only want to select these two objects and not this object, and they're so close that I can't just come across like that, I can select the object that I don't want, push shift, drag out across them all, and select. And what that has done is deselected the one I had selected and selected the ones I didn't. Kind of a handy thing to remember, especially if you've got a stray node or whatever. You can select the line, the object, and then shift select and get that stray node. The next one down is your direct select. Now what that direct select allows you to do is select individual portions of an object or individual objects. All of these objects have a stroke, which is your outside path, and a fill, and you can see that down here, and you can change those colors with these little pucks here. So if I click on this, now I have this whole object selected. But if I come up here and I find out where it says anchor, now I have just that anchor selected. I can also grab just a path, and it's going to give me just that top path. Basically what it's done is selected this anchor and that anchor at the same time. Or I can click in the center and select the whole object. And then you can use that to manipulate however you see fit. Now you notice on the circle you can really do weird stuff, and you've got these little handles. Those handles you can also use your direct select to adjust the curve and the sharpness or roundness of an object. So that direct select tool is used almost as often as your select tool. Now I've got a cool little abstract art here. I can go sell this for millions and millions of dollars. Next one down is your magic wand tool. It's just like all the rest of the magic wand tools out there. If you double click on it, it brings up a little menu for it. And there are other tools in here. If you double click, they'll bring up menus as well. And you can set your tolerance on how tight or loose, for lack of a better term, you want your selection to be. I only have black and white, so it's going to select everything that has a white fill. If I was to set it on a path, it would select everything that has a black path. Kind of a handy tool for some things, and we'll do a project later that I use it a little bit. Not used a lot though. Lasso selection, just a round selection tool. The next one down is your pen tool. And if you notice, there's a little triangle down here in the corner. What that means is if you right click on it, it brings up a sub menu of other tools related to it, like add an anchor point, delete an anchor point, or anchor point manipulation. I don't use that one too much, but the add and minus I do use sometimes. Now this pen tool is going to be used a lot by the airbrush artist. It's how you trace your artwork, sometimes how you're building stuff, but you will need to get used to this tool. The learning curve on it is a little steep at first, but once you get it, it becomes second nature. Basically, you'll click in one spot, and that creates a node or an anchor. And then you see as I drag across, that little line comes out and lets me go wherever. And then I click again, and then it creates a path between those two nodes. And I can continue to do that, and anywhere I click, it gives me a path between the two. Now if I want a round path, I click and I continue to hold, and I do not let go until I get it the way I want it. And that starts pulling out those handles and allows me to curve, and you can see how the curve is going to go by the little preview line. And now as I click and drag before releasing, I get curved paths. Now occasionally you are going to want this curved path to be round, but you're going to want it to go to a sharp point also. So if you hit Alt while still holding your mouse button, it allows you to grab just that one tail and adjust it. You can make it longer, shorter, or angle it, and then release. Now you can see I've got a nice sharp little path there. Another thing that is handy is, okay, I was actually meaning to click on that little corner. While still having it held, I can push the space bar, and that lets me adjust that node a little bit. So I can position it a little bit better if I didn't click exactly where I wanted. Very helpful when tracing an object that has points or whatever, because you can click close to the point, press the space bar, and then you don't have that big pin icon in your way. Another thing that's kind of handy is if you push caps locks, it turns it into a more precise cursor as well. And lets you decide which way you want to work. But as you keep going, you'll notice clicking around. Now once you get close to the original starting point, it brings up that little circle, and that means it is going to connect that path and make it anchor. You can still click and hold and get the little tails and make a corner or whatever, or you can just click on it and it'll fill it. And now that is one full complete object with a path and a fill. Now let's say you did not want to have a complete path. You're wanting to click here, come around. If you hold shift, it brings up that little asterisk, and it's going to add up an intersection in there. Now, I want to end my path here, and I don't want to have to go all the way up and follow this path and get a double cut line or whatever, but I want to end it there. So I'm going to click where I want it to end, and it still has that anchor like I'm going. But if I push Alt and then click anywhere, that last node, it stops it there. So now I've got a object here and a separate object there. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing tracing, you'll use that a lot. Now if you were a little off on stuff, you can grab your direct select and adjust your paths as you see fit. Now by hitting shift there, you notice that it's a separate thing. If I had not held shift with the thing tool, it would have just added another path in there, and now it's actually a node on there. Holding that shift made it to where I can still manipulate and adjust that node a little bit. Next tool I don't use too often, but it's the curvature tool. It's kind of a cool thing. I do not want it to be a part of that. So now, okay. Now I click, and that's my starting point. It puts a little dot. Now I click over here, and it gives me that curve no matter where I go. And it makes really cool French curves, or if you were wanting to make your own kind of Mike LaValle true fire, realistic fire templates, and then send those to your plotter, there you go. You can use it to make that, or French curves or whatever. Kind of a handy tool. I don't use it too much, but you can play around with it. I'm going to go ahead and select everything, Control A, or you can come up with Select All, or just drag a marquee around everything. And I'm going to go ahead and delete everything because it was starting to get a little crowded there. Next one is the text tool. Just click, and if you notice this cover here gives you changed, gives you your font, the style of font, and the font size. But when you click this text and start putting it up, this is not a path yet. This is just text. Your plotter will not see that. What you need to do to make your plotter see it is, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. You need to go up to Object while you have it selected and expand it. Now you need to click one of these, click the fill on this. So no, if you click Object, it only won't do anything. So click Fill. If you don't do that, it's going to create two paths and you'll get a double cut. So click the fill, and it removes the fill and gives you just the path. And then you click OK. Now, if we go to View, Outline, you now see it is a path, whereas before it was not. The plotter would not see it, not cut it out. You need to make sure that you do that and turn it into a graphic that the plotter will see. And now you can move it around, resize it, tweak it however you want. The path tool has, or the text tool has, a little triangle, so you can right click and it gives you vertical on a path and a few other options. The on a path tool is kind of cool. Let's go ahead and put an ellipse out here, and then we'll select that and make it just a path so you can see this a little bit better. Click this, type on path. Now I come over here, click on it, and as you can see, it follows the path. So, pretty cool tool, especially for doing lettering and stuff like that. Delete those. The next one is a line tool. It's just basic straight lines. You can do the same thing with your pen tool and pull it out, hit shift, locks it in 45 degrees, but there's your straight line. If you want to get to in there, push Alt, click anywhere, and you got your straight line. So I don't use that too much. This tool, yes, I use a lot. This is your rectangle. This is a rectangle with rounded corners, ellipse, polygon, star. I don't use the flare tool though. Go ahead and pull a rectangle. There's a rectangle. If you push shift, it locks it to a square. Now, let's say I wanted a square to come right off the end of this, but I wanted the center of the square there. I would push Alt to lock it, and as you can see, it starts bringing it from the center out. If I want it to be a perfect square, just hold shift at the same time. There we go. Later projects will show you that a lot more. Next one down is a round. Same thing as a square, but as you notice, it has a rounded corners. If you grab the selection tool and you see these little circles, you can increase the roundedness, decrease the roundedness. If you do it with the direct select on one of them, select off, select it, select it, change it over to a path, direct select. There we go. Now, I can pull just this individual one and select this anchor, pull this one, select that anchor, make that one square, select that anchor. There we go. Now I have a funky little shape. The ellipse tool, similar to the square, except for it makes round circles. Hold shift and you get a perfect circle. If you hold Alt, starts in the center. If you hold them both, you get a circle. Polygon tool is pretty handy. If you click and drag whatever parameters you have, it will start that, but if you just click without dragging, it brings up a little menu and allows you to change the number of sides and its radius. You can do a pentagon with a 1-inch radius, boom, and then wherever you clicked, it will build a pentagon off of that, and then you can adjust it or move it however you need. Star tool, same as the polygon tool. You click, drag out a star. If you just click, you can change the number of points, and the inside radius, which is this one right here, and then the outside radius, which is that one right there. If you do a 5 by 2, I believe it was. Yeah, there you go. There goes you an almost perfect star for like flags and stuff like that. This is almost perfectly vertical. You can mess with those and get better. So looks like maybe half radiuses are going to be perfect. Let's try that. We'll go 3 by 1.5. No, not quite. Let's try. Still. 2.25. That's closer. But you can mess around with that and get your star, like I said. By doing 5 by 2, it comes out almost perfect. Paintbrush tool I don't use for the airbrushing world. That one, you probably won't have that one. That's a dynamic sketch tool. That is Astute Graphics. We'll go into that a little bit later. Erase tool's kind of cool. I don't really use it, but if I click here and pull in, and when I go to the view, interesting, it's not working out for some reason. Most of the time what happens is you'll erase something and it'll cut into it and erase it. I do not know why it's not working on that one. It was working just fine when I did it the other day. Your rotate tool, we'll go ahead and bring up, yeah, star will work. Boom. Okay, so now we've got this star. I'm going to shrink it down. We've got this star here, and I can rotate it with my rotate tool. You click and drag and it just starts rotating, and it will rotate off the center of it. If you want to remove that, just click someplace else, Alt, boom, and it brings up this window, and you can tell it how many degrees of rotation, and you got a preview. But it'll rotate off of wherever you clicked when you hit the Alt key. Cancel, Alt, pull it wherever you want, and there you go. Gives you that. Now it'll rotate around there. Scale tool I do not use for the airbrushing. Free transform I do not use. Shape builder I do not use. Perspective grid, it puts the grid up for perspective. If you're wanting to do something in perspective, you can turn it on. Mesh tool is similar. Gradient tool, again, your plotter cannot see gradients, so it's a useless tool for the airbrush artist. Color picker, your plotter cannot see color, so useless. Blend tool, useless. Symbol sprayer tool, mostly useless for what we're doing. Column graph tool, useless. These are all aftermarket plugins. I will touch on them in the first project, but you won't have them unless you go buy them. I'll put a link to Stu Graphics in the bio of this film. Artboard tool, that allows you to adjust your artboard. Like now I started off with 12 by 12, but I obviously don't need that for this turn, so I can just bring this in and change it. If I double click on it, it will bring up the artboard window, and you can just go in here and type things or change the orientation however you need. Slice tool I don't use too much. Your hand tool allows you to move your artboard around. Really handy if you're zoomed in. And hand tool. Hotboard key, or keyboard hot thing. If you hold the space bar, it'll bring up the hand. You can do it. Your center scroll wheel, if it is a button as well, also does that. The zoom to pretty self-explanatory. If you're zoomed in and you just want to go back out to a full view real quick, double click on your hand tool and it snaps you out to a fit artboard to window view. Pretty basic tools there. These tools over here are kind of window tools. Color you don't really need. The characters, again, it brings up, if you're in the text bar, the text tool here, and you, oh, that's right, it's on its compound tool. Text, boom. It brings up this window here as well. Paragraph don't really need. More color tools don't really need them. The layers one is handy because you can work in individual layers and lock them or make them invisible for working on really complex. Asset export don't use. Artboards, it's the same as this one over here. Transform is kind of handy because then whatever you have selected, oh, I have it locked still. Lock that real quick. Whatever you have selected, it gives you the dimensions and you can change the dimensions. This little chain here, whatever you do here will be proportionally changed here. If you click the little slash down so it's on, you can change them individually. Align tool, a lot of the times you'll have an align tool up here as well, but it does not have the select how you want to align it. A lot of the times you are just working with the artboard, but that allows you to align it center, left, right, and then distribute multiple objects, distribute spacing. Quite handy tool. I can move. There we go. I moved it all the way over to the edge of the artboard. I can center and center. Now it's in the center all dimensions. Pathfinder tool is quite handy. Unite, minus front, intersect, exclude, divide, trim, merge, crop, outline, and minus back. The main ones you'll be using are unite, minus front, occasionally minus back, divide, trim I use occasionally, merge not too often, crop, outline. I use outline on every project, and as we start doing the projects, I'll explain these more and why I do them. This next one is all direct Astute Graphic plugins that I have. Again, Astute Graphics is an aftermarket plugin that costs money. I will put a link in the bio, and I will show some of them to you as I do projects, but I will also show you how to do the same thing without the tools. The tools are just handy ways to speed you up and eliminate some of the pitfalls when going for airbrush graphics. Let's go ahead and jump into our first project.